Historically,
There we go. Okay, hold on. I'm gonna
I
let
don't want to characterize or stereotype country western singers. My apologies.
You are totally fine, Stephanie.
Okay, thank you.
I do love the idea that like if your hair gets poofy and big, like you need to have a reason for it.
you're about to release a country song. All right, here we go. Actually played it the clean version, and that was still going. So I don't know what the non-clean version is. My bad.
All right. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I'm struggling. Okay. I am
But
back.
but
All
for
right.
but for the record, we do have to say for the record that was Beyonce's new bop, Texas Hold'em. If you haven't given it a listen, you should because it's a great song, and that was apparently the clean version. My apologies. Go ahead, Stephanie.
This is a public meeting, Trace.
This is a public meeting indeed.
All right. Good morning, all. Good to see you. And welcome. Thank you, Brian, for your comments. All right. Let's do some roll call and move on. I will begin with, I see Kelly Abbott. I just want to confirm.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Norma. I don't see Norma. Michelle Bradley. Don't see Michelle. We actually have a very small group today. Miss Ashley, I see your name up there.
Yep, I'm here. I'll be on camera in about 5.
Lovely. Anna.
I'm here. Unfortunately, I'm under the weather, so I will not be on camera.
Oh, feel better. Jenna. Hi, Jenna. Brian Cotter. Dennis, I see you. Good morning.
Yep. Morning.
Thank you. Janelle.
I'm here. I'm shoving breakfast in my face. I'll be back.
Dave Hayes. I don't see. Chelsea.
I'm here just trying to get the kids off to school.
Excellent. Kevin Lash, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you.
See you.
Dave Lee.
Good morning, everybody. I'm here.
Good morning, Dave. Renee.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm off camera because I'm driving at the moment, and I do also apologize. I have competing high priority meetings this morning, so I'll join as long as I can, but I can also get updates from Dave Lee and Dennis Desperos from my department.
Thanks, Renee. Good morning, Beth, co-chair Beth.
Morning.
Brandon.
Good morning. I'll be on camera in about 15 minutes.
Excellent. Miss Becky.
Good morning.
Hi, Becky. Elizabeth.
I'm here.
Where are you? Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning.
Lynette. Don't see Lynette. Timothy. No Timothy. I'm here. And Jana. All right, Trace, that's us. Okay, moving on to just meeting business, pointing you all in the direction of 2 different documents, both from January 3rd. One is the meeting recap, one is the meeting minutes. I'm going to start with the meeting minutes. All of you should have retrieved those from your Google Drive and had an opportunity to review them. Are there any corrections or edits that we need to make to those meeting minutes? Seeing none. Okay. I think I'll do this in 2 pieces. If I could have a motion and a second to approve those meeting minutes, and please announce your name as you make that motion.
Janelle, make a motion.
Thank you.
This is Dennis. I'll second.
Thank you, Dennis. Is there anybody who is opposed to the approval of the January 3rd, 2024 meeting minutes? I see none. All right. Moving on to the same process for the meeting recap also of January 3rd of 2024. Are there any corrections that we need to make to those meeting minutes? All right, seeing none, if we could also again have a motion and a second to approve that meeting recap.
I'll approve.
Jenna, is that you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Beth, I'll second.
All right, Beth, thank you. And is there anybody opposed to the approval of the January 3rd, 2024 meeting recap? Okay, I see none. Trace, my job is done now.
Perfect. Thanks, Stephanie. Good morning, everybody. I'm actually going to bring in Brian here in just a minute. So we're kind of back on we're back on the rotation of breaking into our subcommittee groups. So remember, we went our first group, or for 2 meetings ago, we broke out into our subcommittee groups. Then we had volunteers that came back and shared in the last meeting, and folks kind of shared around a potential recommendation piece. We are now back into the first part where we are going to be breaking into intervention and prevention subcommittees. And you received the research that we'll be kind of like using as sort of a grounding in that conversation. And so Brian's going to share with us. I think, Brian, we've got about 10 minutes and folks can ask questions as well as after he kind of presents on some of that thinking. And then I'll go from there on just kind of the process of the breakout groups, and we'll come back from that. Brian, I'll hand it to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I just thought it would be useful since the whole group is going to end up talking about these 2 topics in particular, at the end of the process that Trace just described, I thought it'd be useful to give you a preview of the resources, since you likely only read one of them, just so you can see both sides of the conversation here. But so yeah, the Prevention Subcommittee is going to be discussing hardware policies. And so the resource document that we sent summarizes the use of hardware for out-of-home facilities in 4 different states. I can just briefly give you an overview of that, although everyone has the link to the full document so you can look for specifics. And again, just whenever the Ombuds Office presents these sorts of state examples, we're not saying that we endorse these or that we certainly don't think that any of these are going to be the silver bullet that solves all of our problems. So just to set the context and understandings of the ways in which we suggest these states be, this information be interpreted and used by you all. But for the topic of hardware, we looked at California, Kansas, Washington, and Wyoming. And these different states have different ways that they have brought in some hardware mechanisms into some of their contained environments. Just another little caveat is these state examples don't exactly match onto the jurisdictions that we as the Timothy Montoya Task Force work with. So for instance, the California example is specific to youth with developmental disabilities. So we know that that's not true of the folks that we have in mind, but we still think that the way that the state uses policy mechanisms can still be useful for us to think, is that something Colorado should pursue? If we did, will we, do it in a different way? So yeah, that's the fine print, I guess, giving context to this. So the larger print is just generally California, as you can see in statute or regs, they create a system that allows secured perimeters and delayed egress. So those are timed door locks that I know there have been interest expressed in by this group in the past. There are special restrictions based around age, but the state policy still generally includes youth. And I included a couple of portions of the statute that get into things like staff training and licensure and the facility plan of operations, sort of more the like administrative or technical pieces that come with having secured perimeters or delayed egresses, but that I thought would be of interest to the task force in thinking not only, okay, if we pursue secured perimeters, how would what would the implications of that be for like the requirements of the facility or, those sorts of considerations. So yeah, again, in the examples that I give on each page, I sort of bold some keywords and I give link to the full citation so you can look at more specifics of how that works. But again, delayed egress devices, I think was the most interesting part that set the California example apart on its own. Kansas also in statute details how secure facilities can be used in secure residential treatment facilities. Again, this is for a specific type of youth with a diagnosis of a severe emotional, behavioral, or psychiatric condition. So not exactly tied on to what we would be using, but lessons can be learned from it. I thought that Kansas was interesting in that it limits the length of treatment that individuals can be in those circumstances for to initially for 6 months, but then at the end of that 6 months, that can be reevaluated, and then another period can be added on top of that. But so it's not just we're putting these youth in these conditions, with no end in sight, but that continual check-in point with the length of treatment. And then they also, Kansas also writes out the rights of the youth, specifically with mentions about how secure residential treatment facilities need to keep the rights of the youth in mind. So I know that, there are components in Colorado law that we would also want to be cognizant of when thinking about how hardware could be implemented in the state. Washington outlines both secure facilities and semi-secure facilities, and they also define in statute staff secure facilities, which creates the requirement that there's a certain ratio of staff to youth. They also include components such as periodic court review of placement and how the placement ends up looking in the first place. So again, just the sort of administration of that, I thought would be interesting to the group. And then finally, the state of Wyoming has secure residential treatment centers as described in the statute there. I think the most interesting element of this, so this gets into doors being locked. These secured residential treatment centers, they must be nationally accredited. So I thought that the group might be interested in having some sort of like a third party oversight entity, having a standard that is checked to make sure that the facility is following certain procedures. But again, any of those, if there are any bits that we like from those states, that could be something to pursue. If there are bits that we specifically don't like, that's still valuable information for the task force as we're deciding, if hardware is something that we want to approach, and if so, how. So that's just a quick overview of the hardware resource. And then to jump into the intervention subcommittee.
Brian, can we
Yeah.
pause just real
Yeah.
quick before we jump to the other one? Obviously, we'll have the discussion with the prevention group there, but just want to see if there's any questions, or I just want to make sure that there's nothing there before we slide into the intervention group. Okay, cool. That's all. Just wanted to double check. Thanks,
Yeah.
Brian. Keep going. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, and again, really looking forward to the conversations that are going to be going on in the subcommittee meetings themselves, and then when we reconvene, everybody will have the opportunity to discuss, their thoughts on this topic, regardless of what subcommittee you're in. But yeah, so now to transition into the intervention subcommittee, we looked at two different types of policy, although there's overlap between them, but just the format is a little bit different. So we divided this into two different segments. The first is states who have varying response categories based on youth characteristics. So this is a way of creating a risk assessment of the needs of the youth, and then having that assessment dictate what policy is required. So I'll just go into the examples from that quite quickly. So we have like Arizona creates let me see the term of art they use. They talk about at-risk youth, so a child who is, they just have bullet points listing out the characteristics that would prompt this. So the child is suicidal, child has been diagnosed with a serious mental illness, child is pregnant, a few different characteristics like that. If that is the circumstance of the child who is missing, then that prompts specific elements of policy. The same is true in DC, which we looked at DC in a previous meeting, but DC defines in different ways what an absent child is, what a missing child is, what an abducted child is, and what a high-risk child is. And so those circumstances, again, would prompt a specific kind of response policy if that child goes missing. And they give a list of, I think, 9-ish characteristics for high-risk children. And again, there's some overlap in the kinds of characteristics that these states are considering. And then finally, we can look at North Carolina is the same. They have a high-risk child is a defined legal term of art. And they say the missing child's safety is severely compromised for one or more of the following reasons. And there's quite a long list of those characteristics. And then so, for instance, one thing that might be done is if a child or youth is identified as high risk, this must be communicated to law enforcement. There must be supervisors must obtain and review daily progress reports. So again, just that those children who meet or children or youth who meet that threshold then prompt a specific type of response. And yeah, that's the end of the first section. So very happy to take any questions. Janelle, I see you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just wondering, and I'm in the intervention side of things, but it's also kind of, it still goes. So I know that the survey came out and the survey just basically said, which one do you like best, which state? And I had made the comment on there that I think we should build on like these resources that we have, because I don't love every single option as a whole. And so I feel like maybe pulling pieces from each of the options to build something for Colorado is best, because there's things that I love in each one and there's things that I don't love in each one. And so I don't know if there's a way to do that in pulling things out, to build something specific instead of just doing a mirror of a model that's already in place.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I think that's exactly what we're looking for. We're not expecting the end result of these discussions to be, okay, Brian's going to go copy paste statute from California into our law books. I think that's why we really appreciate the viewpoints of the task force members is you all are aware of the nuance that's needed to take these possible solutions and have them hit the ground running in Colorado. So please, in the subcommittee meetings and just generally in the task force meetings, please just give voice to those. And then when Jordan and I and others are going through and compiling these discussions and then turning them into the draft language, just like for the last time, we'll make sure to draw from that. We're not expecting that any of these states are going to be a home run. But yeah, if there are any bits you like, any bits you don't like, that's all valuable information to communicate to the group. I saw Dennis, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I'm not in the prevention group, but one thing I think the prevention group needs to consider as they're considering like secure perimeter fences is the Juvenile Justice Prevention Act, which is a federal act, does not allow a locked perimeter fence if you're serving two different populations. Like if you're serving the DYS population of committed youth and you're serving child welfare youth, those two populations cannot be mixed in a secure facility. So some of our facilities do contract with DYS and do have both populations. So just to be considered as you're looking at locked perimeter fences.
That's great. Yeah, thank you. That context is really important. Thank you.
I just wanted to add something really quick to piggyback off of your response, Brian, to I think it was Janelle's question. We're going to spend some time both reflecting using the note catcher and in our discussion to try to tease out the pieces that make sense to pull from the various states that we looked at and additional ideas that you have. But to the extent that there are specific pieces from different states that you want to lift up for consideration in Colorado, that's the kind of detail that I know Brian and Jordan want to be able to craft some draft language to come back to the whole group.
Thanks, Doris. Kelly, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that the Division of Criminal Justice is the State Department that monitors for the Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have about what all that means with the locked perimeters and the egress doors, and if they want to go that way.
Perfect, thank you. Yeah, and that's why I love having such just a great cast of characters in the task force with all those insights. Not to spend too much time on the preview. I'll just go quite quickly through the second half so we can get into more intense, elongated conversation. So the second half, or the second category, we included in the intervention resource is specified response protocols. So we provided the text of relevant Colorado regulations, which in contrast with these other states is quite limited, or at least, short and concise, saying that the text is available there. To contrast that, as you can see, some states have very elaborate ways that they spell out what the statewide response protocols are. So Michigan divides up in their regulations things that must happen immediately, things that must happen within 24 hours, things that must happen within 1 business day, within 2 business days, and they even specify, this type of entity or employee has responsibilities A, B, and C. Another class of worker has responsibilities D, E, and F. Tennessee, just even if this is only window dressing, they just portray the different timelines quite well, I think. They have 2 columns that portray what the responses must be immediately or the next business day, ongoing steps, and then what must happen after the child is or the youth is recovered. Washington is, again, quite elaborate. A couple of these states incorporate elements that we've talked about elsewhere in this ongoing conversation, like specialized investigative staff, how they get involved, how they work alongside caseworkers or county units. So all things to be considered if our state decides to move forward with a specified statewide response protocol that's spelled out in a similar way. So any questions on that before we break into our subcommittees? Trace, I think I might turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. All right, y'all. I'm going to drop in a link here. This is for Doris's group around the statewide policies piece. So if you've been with Doris, and we can go through. Doris, actually, do you want to, I know you were looking at that list. Do you want to read folks' names just as a reminder so we don't get confused as to where we need to go? You're on mute.
I have the folks who were in the last meeting who were in the intervention subcommittee. We have Norma, Elizabeth, Brian, Beth, and Becky.
Did you say
I said that like a question. Intervention, yes.
I think that's the prevention group, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say I was an intervention.
Who was an intervention?
I was an intervention, and none of those folks were in intervention. So I think that's the prevention group that you were mentioning.
I thought I was prevention also.
So this is the intervention group.
Let's...
I might be missing some folks.
I was in intervention last time.
Yeah, I believe, and I wasn't here last meeting, so.
Kevin, you're with me. I can go through my list of folks that are staying with me. Maybe the prevention and intervention gets confusing to people. We should also think about who your facilitator was. So when you did the breakout group, so like Ashley, you were with me. Becky, you were with Doris. Kevin, you're with me. Dennis, I think you switched a couple times, but we want you to stick in the one group. So who were you with last time?
I've been in intervention the whole time.
With Doris?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Sorry. So Doris, Beth, where are you? Doris. Perfect. Janelle, you were with Doris as well, right?
Yeah, I've been in intervention the whole time.
Okay. Got it. All right. Brandon, you're with me. Renee, you were with me. Anybody else have a question about who they were with? Kelly?
I was in prevention.
Yep, you're with me, Stephanie. You're stuck.
Just wanted to confirm.
You're stuck. You're stuck. Okay, perfect. So if you're with Doris, which is intervention, you are clicking on the link that I just dropped in the chat, and that's where y'all are headed. If you're with me, you're going to stay here. And then we're going to see everybody back in this room, which they'll drop the link in that room at the end, and we'll do public comment and dismiss from there. All right, thanks, y'all. Karen's over there. Doris, you should be good to jump. Ashley, oh, you did switch. Why did you switch? Well, you presented last time. Which one did you present? That was
For
my group.
intervention. I thought I'm so confused right now. I did both surveys because I couldn't remember where I was.
You're with me.
Okay, fine.
Yeah,
Works for
because
me.
you presented on, right? Didn't you? Yeah, you're with us. I think we had switched you. That's why it was confusing. But yes, your prevention. Don't leave. All right. Anybody else? Everybody else good here? I think this is all of us.
Yes. I guess we don't want the groups to be super lopsided if we want Doris to have folks to actually talk to. I know there's.
Well, but we're not going to be switching people back and forth. Yeah. So got Anna, you can't move to that. Is that what you're saying? Are you clicking on that link? I'm not sure. Oh, I know. You're not feeling well.
I
Sorry.
apologize. I am clicking on the link for whatever reason. It is not going anywhere.
All right, Anna. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to email you the link and just exit this meeting altogether and then just click on it in your email.
Okay, will do.
That should do the trick. All right, y'all. Sorry, give me just 1 second. I want to send that to her. Let's start. So Brian's going to be jumping between groups. So let's actually start on the research side of things before we jump in. I'm going to drop in the link while you are asking any questions, any clarifications. And Brian, if you want to go any deeper, I know that you just kind of did a quick overview of things that stuck out to you. Obviously, like just from the policy side of things, pieces that we wanted to draw out, et cetera. And then I'm going to drop in the note catchers for folks. And just so you know, each person has a note catcher now. So you'll just open this link that I drop in and you'll find yours. And that's the only document you're working within. We're trying to like not make it where everybody's typing over each other, et cetera. So Brian, I'll actually hand it to you first if there's anything else that you want to touch on, but then want to just open it up for questions because again, we only have Brian for the first like 15 or so, 20 minutes. So I want to make sure that we're utilizing him before he goes on his way.
Yeah, I don't think I have any other particular details that I want to get into with those states, just to see what reactions folks have, or not to volunteer anyone, but I'm always interested to hear Brandon's perspective on considerations of what things will look like in practice. Yeah, I don't think I have any other contacts unless I'm very happy to answer questions as I'm able.
Yeah, and maybe it'll also be helpful. So we only received 4 survey responses, just so you all know. So we're working with a little bit of limited information as far as where folks are coming into this conversation, but do appreciate the folks that were able to fill that out. And so I'm also looking at those responses too. But Brandon, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to review the other states. I know you got a few things going on your side, but so want to pick on you first, like Brian said, but have you had a chance to review the materials that were shared as examples from other states?
No, I have not. Well, briefly. I do have a quick question though before I respond to something for Brian, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Brian, currently, did we find the regulations on what the perimeters, secure perimeters in Colorado? Is there anything in Colorado that defines it besides the Juvenile Act that Dennis was talking about?
I couldn't find anything specific to the jurisdiction that we would be acting in, but very happy to hear if anyone has more information on that. Stephanie, I see the raised hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't have any information on regulations on perimeters as it relates to this specific context, meaning residential care facilities primarily. What I would say, I guess, if we're just talking about general observations, is that, I'm pretty much struck by the lack of options. I think it's tough in Colorado because these facilities that we're discussing primarily here are individual contractors with the state, and they are not state-owned facilities. So, right, if I own a facility, I'm not going to build you a $3 million fence if I'm not guaranteed a contract for more than whatever my contract term is, right? And so once I might have incorrectly ruled that out in my brain, but to me, it's just about the money and it's about practicality, right? Is that facilities won't do this unless you pay them a whole bunch more. So that kind of left me with just looking at this notion of delayed doors, which frankly doesn't sound extreme to me or crazy. And I was like, looks good to me, but my analysis might have been simple. I just came out with, I support delayed locks. And that was kind of the extent of my analysis. So I'd be interested in other people's thoughts about the research and just what we showed, and not Brian, your research, what the research revealed. I didn't want to make it sound negative.
Go ahead, Ashley, and then we'll go to Brandon.
Yeah, I think I was not surprised that it was hard to find, that none of these really were targeted directly to youth and child welfare, because even just reading these, I mean, they really started to sound like jail, like juvenile justice facilities. And you just cannot put a child who has done, who's in a system, not because of creating crime, but because of, other trauma and other issues. And I'm talking from the child welfare perspective. So like when there's a dependency neglect action is what I'm talking about. I know that's oversimplified. You cannot treat them like they have committed a crime and are a criminal. Like it is just, you just can't do it. And so I think so it didn't surprise me that you aren't seeing anything similar when it comes to, what we did see felt very, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in DYS facilities and detention facilities. And so it started to really feel like that just reading it. I was excited to see that delayed egress, because that, I agree with Stephanie, felt a little different. I didn't know about that technology or whatever, but I thought, I mean, I'm not sure 30 seconds is enough time, but the idea that like you just get a minute to like try to intervene, I thought was kind of an interesting solution. And, I don't necessarily think fencing is a problem, but it was more just reading some of these, it really started to feel and sound like those detention facilities.
Thanks, Ashley. Brandon, I saw your hand up. You want to jump in?
Yeah. So, I agree that the sentiment like that you don't want facilities to, the further you can get away from institutionalization, like the feel, the better. However, I do think that there is a difference between making facilities secure and making them feel like a prison. I do think there's a difference, and there's a way to do that without, you know, doing the same thing. Like and because at the end of the day, even kids that are in the dependency neglect, they're coming to a treatment center for a reason, for safety. And if so securing something, I don't necessarily think is I think it should be our goal. The problem, the delayed egress, we can do the delayed egress now. We have delayed egress doors at our facility currently. I think there's an issue with the reality that 30 seconds and how secure those doors, in practicality work. We have kids that will, if you push that hard enough, it goes right through. There's no way to, secure it that way where it actually stops them. from going out there. Now, some kids that are just playing around with it it'll delay it and it'll stop, but it will not stop a kid that's extremely frustrated and slams that door and opens up. Right? It just doesn't do that. I also think there's a difference between doors and buildings and perimeter. I think when we talk about securing a perimeter, it's not just keeping kids from leaving, but also keeping the dangers from coming in. I mean, schools do it. Businesses do it. This is part of the way of the world in today's day and age. So to look at it as that it's different for these kids, but not everybody else in the world, and securing them, I think is a wrong thought process, in my opinion.
Yeah, Brandon, can I tease out a little bit more? I'm just kind of curious, like maybe there's an example of when you talk about the difference between the two of like, something that feels so much like I don't want to put words in your mouth. Like, you were just saying there's a difference between like a secure facility and a facility that feels like a jail. And I just like, is that something that you feel like you've accomplished that like we would want to like highlight as an example of what's possible, or is it something that's kind of just in your brain? I just want to make sure I'm clear on like what
Well,
your difference is.
Well, I think it's like everything we do in the world. There a balance between security and I guess freedoms and rights and those things. Like I think we have to there is a line and there is a balance that could be worked with. To me, like I'm not an advocate for our buildings to be to have jails like cells and things like that. Like I'm not I think those are like I've been DYC facilities as well, DYS facilities. Like I'm not an advocate for looking at like that and having secure cells or anything like that for kids like that. Am I an advocate for a fence that locks and is secured around your buildings and organizations? Yeah, I mean I think that's a normal response. I don't think that makes it feel like a jail cell. I think you don't need to have barbed wire or anything over the top of your facility or your fence and those things. But I think that most normal like I said, organizations do try to secure their perimeter, and I don't think that's an uncommon, and I don't think it makes it feel how you do it, depending on how you do it, as a situation where you're walking into a jail cell.
Yeah. Yeah,
If that is that making sense?
Yeah, no, it is. And I'm not trying to pick on you. I just think you're a really important voice here as far as like a person who, it sounds like is trying to strike that balance already with the resources you have. And Stephanie, I'm just seeing your questions here too. Those are some of the things I'm thinking of. So Brandon, maybe just something to be thinking about too and come back to. I don't want to put you on the spot right this second. And David, we can bring you in, but Stephanie's saying, how do you strike the balance? Do you have examples of what other facilities do? How do your delayed doors work? And have they kept some kids safe? So why don't those are in the chat. I just know you're on your phone, so I wanted to read those out loud for you. But why don't you just put a little thought to that? And then David, why don't you jump in, and then Brandon, we'll come back to you on that. Go ahead, David.
The only thing I was really going to chat about, I like the idea of the delayed egress doors. There's definitely, I'm also curious about this semi-secure facility that Washington State talks about. I'd like more detail on that to really understand what that means. And then I really look to the group and go, all right, what do you want? As in, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Do you want to stop runaways completely, or do you just want to? And the only way to completely stop that is to make places completely secure. That's just the reality of it. Honestly, that's not what I want. I don't want complete secure. I mean, I want more and more staff training on intervention and building relationships and connections to work with kids when they're getting in that crisis mode. And if there's something that can prevent a little bit of time for you to work with that youth. I like that idea. But I also go, what does this group want? I mean, do we want it? Because unless things are completely secure, you're not going to stop all runaways. Kids are very impulsive, they get very emotional, and sometimes that communication and therapy, I mean, all that stuff isn't going to work in the heat of the moment, and they're going to go. And you're not going to stop that sometimes. So I guess those are some of my thoughts as I'm listening, going, I don't like the idea of fully secure residential treatment center types of places. I agree that when you get to that DYS level, when it's been determined by the court that this youth is potentially a danger to society, that's when this comes into place. And not all youth are like that are in some of our out of home placements, which include therapeutic foster homes and things like that. So there I go. Hopefully that stirred up some conversation.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Norma. Trace, I got bumped out and now I can't get back into my group.
Yeah, no problem, Norma. I will drop the link back in the chat for you.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, don't be apologized.
Goodbye, everyone.
David, thanks for that. I think you're reminding us too. You're like, I don't want to lose sight of the kind of the piece that you were naming around, like, like I want the trauma informed piece and those sorts of things. And so I appreciate you reminding us of that. And so I'm not trying to just say like, no, but as far as like this conversation goes, we kind of have to stick to this particular piece around this hardware piece. So I want to like make sure I'm holding the tension of that, of knowing that that's a value and truth for this group, and also recognizing that if you all want to really coalesce around a recommendation around this specific hardware piece, we have to stick to that. So so I appreciate you just kind of naming the tension there for us, which is important. Brandon, I didn't want to cut you off. I just didn't want to make you have to keep monologuing if you weren't quite ready to share. So if you want to jump back in, please do.
Yeah, so to answer Stephanie's question in the chat, a couple things. One, I think you can look at things around like I said, I think there's a difference between securing a perimeter and securing buildings, and putting things in the buildings that are detention esque around it. I also think some of it depends on the type of fence, how far away the fence, the distance, what that looks like, how high it is. I think all those things come into play when you're talking about the institutionalization of perimeter and boarding the border. So I think all those can be accomplished without having a feel of a jail cell or a jail. I also think that to answer the question about delayed egress, yeah, I mean, I think delayed egresses can help. I agree with the previous statements that, like, ultimately, if you want to stop runaways, to the highest level, you got to secure every area. I think there is a balance. I think we can do better than what we do now as far as securing, our organizations. But I don't think you can go overboard either. So I mean, if delayed egress is, the recommendation, but here's the problem: it doesn't really change. Like, we're allowed to do that now, and if the point is, like, how do we stop, this, like, why this task force exists? A delayed egress isn't going to stop that. And delayed egress isn't going to prevent a kid from, running away and putting themselves in a very bad situation.
Yeah, and Brandon, I'm actually seeing a note. Ashley, that's exactly where I was going to. So this idea of like we're allowed to now, kind of think when you were talking, I was curious, like, how widely is it used, and is this group interested in kind of exploring you know, Brian had just sent me a chat too, and these are also, I was thinking like, let's say we like the delayed locks. Let's pick on delayed locks for a minute. This group, I think, also needs to really be exploring, like, are you requiring it? Are you suggesting it? Is it just available as an opportunity, right? Because are there some places that do that? And we know that if kids go there, they run. But if they go to Brandon's facility, they don't run because Brandon's utilizing all the things that are possible. So I want to just kind of tease that out from you all as far as like what you're, as far as from a policy perspective goes, where we should also be headed, because that's really what this group is charged with doing, is not just like, yeah, it's a great idea, let's make it an option, but like if it's, you know, if, and that might be something, Brian, that we ask from you of like the current state of Colorado. If it is like Brandon saying, yeah, delayed locks are possible because they're not illegal here. You know, do we have any data to suggest like how many folks are actually utilizing that? And maybe if delayed locks is a good idea, because Brandon, it works for you all, it's at least a prevention method. Should this group pursue a recommendation around a requirement of that, right? Or something like that. So just want to name that's the tension that's coming out for me listening to you all, is like, is not just the ideas of it, but also what do you want to do with it? Do you want to require it? Do you want to suggest it, etc.? So, and you don't have to respond to that right now. I just want to name that's a layer here. So Renee, I want to jump in, and Brandon, I appreciate you kind of jumping in with those thoughts. Renee, and then we'll go to Kevin and Jenna.
Yeah, hi folks. Sorry, I'm standing in a hallway, so hopefully it stays quiet here. Yeah, I think there's a lot of good points that have been raised. You know, one about, you know, just having it locked. There's a big continuum between what that might look like between that and, you know, a secure like detention facility where every room door is locked and the kids are locked in at night, where the, you know, the housing units themselves are locked, where there's locked, you know, it's locked between each and every, you know, portal, and the kids' movement is controlled in a very controlled way compared to, you know, if it's just a perimeter fence and the interior would be the same as, you know, the same as a residential center is now, just a big continuum. I think also to your point just now, Trace, thinking about which kids would have what sort of interventions, I think is a piece of it. And I think that speaks to what you were just talking about. It's not necessarily, you know, if we're talking about adding more delayed egress places, you know, that shouldn't necessarily go to like every level of group home. If we're talking about locked perimeter fences, that also shouldn't necessarily go to every level of group home. I do think it, you know, what Brandon mentioned, that right now the delayed egress isn't preventing many kids from needing to go out of state, and some of the, you know, some of the tragic events that have happened. So, you know, I think that's something to consider. I think another thing to consider, and a big concern with having a secure facility, is if that will lead to there being less staff supervision. And so it's really important to have, you know, regulations and, you know, all the precautions in place so that it's not like instead of other services and things like that. I know that's often a concern, and, you know, because it has been something that has been the way it's played out in the past too. If the kids are locked in, then you don't have to, you know, watch them as much. So, you know, it's really important that all of those little details are taken care of, and making sure that kids are getting the therapeutic services, you know, whatever the actual interventions are, like the whole package, like you were just talking about.
Thanks, Renee. Appreciate that. Kevin, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, just some thoughts. First of all, I think that what Renee said is kind of, you know, what I would contemplate, which is, you know, you're going to do a risk assessment, and you're going to have different facilities with different levels of security, because it isn't a one-size-fits-all thing. I entirely puzzled, entirely puzzled by this idea that barriers aren't okay, or some, you know, we use barriers all the time. I'm military. I work behind fences for 30 years, you know, police department, I mean, hospitals, lots and lots of people use fences, but we're not going to use fences to keep our kids safe. I'm just entirely puzzled by that whole thought. To me, there's nothing about a fence that makes anything offensive. I think Brandon sort of said some of that same thing. And, you know, the other thing you have is space. The problem with some of our facilities is they're in a very urban area, and if the kid gets across the street, you can't find him anymore. Other facilities, you know, might be out in the plains or whatever, and you have a lot of space to kind of work with things. So, but those are just kind of my thoughts. The other statistic that I heard at two briefings in the past that sticks in my mind, we talk about a line between, kind of who's mental health and who is juvenile justice. And the statistic that's always stuck in my head that I try to be mindful of is that 70% of the time, I'm told there's an overlap there. They're the same kid. Same kid with mental health gets in the juvenile justice system, like 70% of the time. So tell me if that statistic is incorrect, but I've heard it a couple of times now over the years. Just comments. That's
Kevin, can you say that statistic again? That
70% of the kids that have mental health issues are also in the juvenile justice system. That they're the same kid. That there isn't this bright line.
Well, I would say in dependency and neglect cases, 70% of the kids are not also in JD cases, and I think that probably most of the kids in the DNN system have some kind of
neglect
trauma background.
Yeah, so maybe we're talking about three buckets here. So, but I just have trouble seeing what's so offensive about a fence. Really, I'm just not seeing it. Heck, we put fences around housing areas to keep people out because certain communities don't want people coming in. I mean, we use fences all the time for different things. I just don't see the offense there.
Kevin, are you saying that? I just want to make sure I'm clear. Are you saying that because you feel like people are against that here, or is it
I go by it, that's all. Yeah, well, we talked about the Juvenile Prevention Act. I don't know exactly what the fine points in that are, but you can vary off part of a facility and, routes that people have to go in a certain direction or whatever, but I did get the impression by some of the conversation that, we just can't go there. And
I don't want to, no, I think it's a good, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding kind of, where you're coming from. I think on that, what I was hearing from folks was more around the cost and the policies in place that would prevent that from being a viable option, not so much that people weren't seeing the value of that. That was my read on it. I'm not trying to push back on you. I just want to name, if that's helpful, that was kind of where I heard people, because I think the goal would be like, what's implementable, what's realistic, what's possible, those sorts of things. And so I think that was maybe the question and the challenge from people more than it was that it was like a valid thing. Do the facilities own the land that they're on? Are they able to, right? Like all the pieces that came up earlier. So
you might have one or two facilities that would want a fence, and you'd route the kids that have those characteristics to those facilities, would be the thought, as opposed to every facility. This is definitely not going to be a cookie cutter approach.
Right. Okay. So you're saying also, is there an exploration there around how folks are, where kids are being placed, et cetera, if it's a resources question? Yeah, I think that's a very good push there. Appreciate that. Jenna, do you want to jump in? And then I kind of want to pause this for a second after this. This is super helpful. I think it's also hopefully helping you all kind of start thinking around the things that you're excited about to push forward, or the things also that you have questions about. But I want to make sure that we're capturing everyone. So I'll pause this after Jenna. Go ahead.
So I too had some questions around this Juvenile Act because I don't know much about it either. And so I guess the initial question would be, are we legally allowed to have fences, right? So again, I don't know if I hear a clear understanding if we can or can't. But Kevin, I think you made a lot of good points. I think kind of having levels of security. So if it's lower level, how we're defining that, maybe there's door alarms on all the kids' doors, but nothing's locked. It's not a locked facility. And then there's a policy in place when door alarms go off, how do people respond? And then, the next level is door alarms and egress doors. And then the highest level is door alarms, egress doors, and if we can have a fence, do that. So I was kind of thinking in those terms, and I don't know if this part is too far off, so correct me if I'm going kind of crazy, but I think about, again, what Kevin said, if kids are running in an urban area and there's a high risk for a child getting hit by a car, can we put something in the community where signs are lighting up? Like, you can't tell me that people don't know that there's a facility within their neighborhood. And so is there something where signs can start to light up for crossing walks so they know, like, hey, be on high alert, there is a kid out on the run right now. Can we prevent that child from getting hit by a car while they're on the run? Does that make sense? So I know that that seems really extreme, but I think it's all those pieces that need to be considered. And then the last thing I'll say, and I wanted to ask Brian before he left, but curious if there's any research out there. There's a residential facility for youth villages, I think in Tennessee, and it's on a lot of land. And that is their whole prevention for running. These kids can run, but there's so much room to run that they get tired, and then the staff know exactly how to like go and search land and pick them up. Again, that's a lot of money to rebuild places on land, but like that's ideal to me. So those are my thoughts.
I think I've made this joke before, but I think you just described the movie Holes, right? Is that the premise there? Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, Jen, I think it's a great question. I think I actually just saw in the chat, I think it was Stephanie said, yeah, out of the box thinking. I mean, that's the thing is I don't think we should limit the ideas. So certainly can capture that for Brian as well as far as the research side goes. So here's what I want to I'm not trying to pause the conversation, but I want to make sure we're capturing thoughts in a way that we can kind of we have to come back to the group after this meeting with some ideas, right? Some suggestions. And so I want to make sure that I'm kind of understanding where you all are on this. Obviously there's some big questions around the policy side. Or Kevin, go ahead. Sorry. Okay, never mind. What's implementable, getting clear on what the challenge, Dennis kind of threw in his piece, and it sounds like folks are kind of like, okay, so what does that actually mean? Kevin's, piece around, okay, well, could we think about this, more strategically as far as resources available and allocating them, and then making sure that those kids have places to go that account for the needs that they have as far as a locked, facility or delayed locks, egress windows, that sort of thing. So, I want to put back in the chat, and I'm not trying to stop our conversation. I just want to make sure I'm capturing things. The note catcher and the research to review. So again, if you're not super jazzed on any of these ideas, I want you to name that, and that's okay. But I also don't want you to stop, kind of to Stephanie's point, I don't want you to stop your creative thinking around then what you would be interested in. And I want to see where we can pull out some themes and commonalities across this group so we can start making some headway here. So if you click into the note catcher thing, you should have your own particular note catcher. We put some prompting questions there based around the research, but also just trying to capture general thoughts of like what would be an opportunity and then what would be a challenge. But I also want you to just feel like in the spirit of creative thinking, if you want additional notes below that doesn't fit neatly into any of those boxes, please do that. And I want to just give us some work time to really put our thoughts down. And then I want to bring us back for a conversation. I'm going to be hopping around into each person's note taker, trying to pull out where I see some themes so I can help kind of kickstart that conversation. But we've got about 45 minutes. And so let's spend the next 15 minutes, I think. Unless I see that no one's writing. Putting some thoughts to paper as far as what you'd like to see and what you are interested in. And then let's come back and see if we can kind of get somewhere on a few key ideas. Does that sound good to everybody?
Yeah, Trace, do we just hit download and then are you able to see?
You don't need to download it. You just open it and start typing away. It's a live document. So if you open it, you find your name on there, you click into that document, just edit it. And because it's on Google Drive, I can see your edits directly. Brandon, I just put I'm guessing that's your computer. Should be coming in.
Yeah, I'm just switching to my computer.
Cool. Oh, Brian, yep, you are. Let me I'm going to drop you a link, Brian, to get to the other. All right, y'all, I'm going to bring us back at 9:20. So I'm just going to say, let's have some things on paper and be ready to kind of share out the two or three things that we're feeling some energy around. And we'll go from there.
Trace, I'm having a little bit of a problem here. I clicked into the note catcher and it says it wants me to use Chrome. I'm using Edge right now. And for reasons having to do with my antivirus, I can't use Chrome on my computer. So I don't know what to do. It just comes up as gobbledygook whenever I hit the note catcher. You know what I mean?
All right.
Oh, it goes. Maybe it's all right. Now it seems to be working. All right, forget.
Yes. Okay. All right, cool. Glad it worked out. Might have just needed a minute to think about it.
Exactly.
Hey Trace, where are these note catchers?
Yeah, I'll drop them back in the chat. It might have dropped off when you switched. Give me 1 second. You gotta click into this link. I also put the review the research below, and then find your name and open your own. All right, I just put it in the chat. All right, we're gonna do 5 more minutes and then I'm seeing some themes here, so we'll bring it back after 5 minutes and talk. All right, do folks need a couple more minutes or are they good? Maybe give me a thumbs up if you're ready to come back. Okay. Big thumb, David. Love it.
Yeah, I could use it. Well, I could use a couple more minutes.
Well, Kevin,
But
let's do just a couple more minutes. That's fine.
yeah, whatever your time, whatever time allows, and we can stop
Okay.
now.
Let's do 3 more minutes.
Yeah, there's always a lot to write.
Yeah, and if you're done, use it as a quick bathroom break. But 3 minutes, and we'll bring everybody back.
Hey, Trace.
Yeah.
Do I have to like save this or does it automatically go
No.
on to the thing?
No, it's a live. Yeah, you don't have to do anything. All you gotta do is type.
All right, cool.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm good if you're waiting on me since I was the one that needed a couple more minutes, but I don't know where others are.
Okay. Let's see, Jenna, are you there? And Ashley, are y'all there? If everybody's here, we'll jump back in. Jenna might have stepped off when I said take a bathroom break, so let's give it a minute.
While everybody's waiting, I'll just say happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Hope you guys have a great Wednesday and enjoy the day.
I appreciate that. I forgot to
with someone you care about.
I know, I forgot it was Valentine's Day. I'm a terrible partner. Literally. Like, oh boy. Yeah.
Happy Valentine's Day. I agree. It's one of my favorite holidays for my kids. When they were growing up, we always had a Valentine's party before they went to school, complete with pink iced donuts and confetti and the stuff. So today they wrote me and
super
said,
mom.
No, trust me, that would have been the only thing that I probably worked on. But they wrote me this morning at age 24 and 27 and said, Mom, we missed that.
Oh, that's so sweet.
They're sweet.
I love that. My mom was like, I sent Grady a Valentine's Day box, and I was like, Mom, I said, it's not full of candy, is it? Because that's what she used to do. And I'm like, we don't need candy. He's 15 months old. She's like, no, it's like Play-Doh. I was like, okay, great. So it's good. All right, y'all, let's jump in. I think we have some good, I just want to say I'm encouraged by, I'm just popping around everybody's note catchers. I think we have some things that we're gelling around. So I'm gonna give it a go as far as presenting that back to you. Jenna, I'm gonna steal, beg, borrow. Actually, something I saw in your note catcher was around this idea of just breaking it down. As far as, again, I'm just gonna stick on the hardware piece for now. So we'll talk about the elements for success. We'll talk about those pieces. I want to put that on the shelf for a minute. And I just want to see like what we're interested in and what we're not interested in, and then we can go to the other pieces. So Jenna broke it down into these kind of 4 buckets. One is like anything to do with the youth room. So when it's residential, is there any sort of element there? 2 is at the building level, 3 is at the perimeter level, and 4 is at the community level. Some of you spoke just to the building. Some of you spoke to all 4 of those. Some of you spoke just to 2 of those. So I'm just going to bring it all together into one. So I'm going to just go each one, and let's just spend a few minutes in each kind of category. So I'm starting with youth room. I didn't see a ton on this. Jenna, you explicitly stated this one, so I don't want to gloss over it. You were the only one I think that wrote to it, unless I missed someone else, and maybe folks didn't even consider this. But Jenna's suggestion was just around the door alarms piece, which you spoke to earlier. So I just want to make sure I'm understanding in your scenario here. It's nighttime, kids are in their rooms, and a kid runs, and there's an alarm activated that is at the staff level. I'm assuming it doesn't put the entire building onto alarm. I'm assuming it goes into a room where staff is then aware and knows what's happening. Do you want to give any other voice to that before
I mean, I don't know all the technology out there. It would be awesome if it could just notify the staff. So maybe it's a silent alarm, so then the kid doesn't know they're onto them. Or, I think about this too as a CPA with foster homes, right? We often go buy our families those cheap sticky door alarms just so there is a loud beeping sound if their child leaves the room. They're not locked in the room. That's not safe. They can go to the bathroom freely. And it notifies the family if they're going to leave. And then we look at that doing for like the front door. So I think about that on all those levels for kids in the least restrictive environment, all the way up to residential. But starting, I would think nighttime is a pretty common time for kids to try and leave. So that was my thought there.
Yeah, appreciate you sharing that. Before Brandon, I want you to jump in. I just want to name something you just reminded me. The other thing is something that people are interested in too is this kind of like is there an option around variety of facilities? I know a variety of facilities already exist either naturally or by design or by statute. I'm not entirely sure, but wanting to kind of explore that. So we're not saying that this I want to just kind of put that on the shelf too, as far as if we're talking about some facilities, not all facilities, etc. But Brandon, curious for you to jump in. Is that already a thing? Is that
yeah. So actually I just installed and actually this happened in the last 6 months. I found
I call it the Iron Curtain, but it's like these infrared lasers that are, invisible, and they actually come down from, like a doorway, and it also divides the room. And what we do is, turn it on at night, and you can't see it or anything like that. They're real small, and they're up on the top, the top, and um, what it does is if it gets broken, the boundary, it notifies on a computer, but also notifies a light on the room that movement is occurring. So if for whatever reason the staff is like up the hallway or down, the hallway can't in front of the room, and they see uh, the light go off, boom, they go right there and they document, what's going on. Most of the, 99.9% of the time, this kid has to go use the restroom, but
right.
But in case there's something going on that shouldn't be going on, it's it's an added tool to it. But you could do it. You could do it for Windows. You could do it for.
I was just about to say.
You could do it for all types. We just happen to not have windows that you get out on in the bedrooms, so we use them for the doorways. But and it's actually not that overly expensive too. The laser the infrared laser, the invisible laser is like about $100 each one. Now the system was about 2,500 to set up, but it wasn't overly expensive.
I'm putting this idea of Mission Impossible lasers down, is what I said.
They don't have a name, kind of put it together, so I call it that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Steelers fan.
Again, we got a lot to get through, so I don't want to stand too long on this idea of the youth room or these things. But any like major concerns there? It sounds like a less invasive, kind of low cost option that, again, Brandon, like you said, oftentimes it's the kid going to the bathroom. So maybe you explore putting these, infrared like on all windows, right? Or key doors that that if a kid breached that door, there's literally no reason that a kid should be breaching that door at certain times, that sort of thing. Is anybody have any major opposition to that? I saw just a lot of head nods, so I just wanted to throw it out there as one.
Oh, I like it. It's creative and it's not that invasive.
Yeah. Cool. All right, let's move on then. So that's on the youth room side, and just maybe I'll just say like interior side too. If you, for purposes of just moving along, if you have any additional ideas that you want to surface for that topic, toss it in the chat and we can come back to it. Moving on to building. When we say building, again, talking hardware, the number one thing I saw was I want to make sure I understand what this is. When we say egress doors, are you talking about and locks? Can someone just spell this out for me? I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as far as, because certain people use certain language, other people use other language. Who's an expert here that can explain what exactly that is as far as the mechanism itself, so that we can all make sure we're on the same page? Like, paint a picture of what that is. David, go ahead.
I guess Brandon's probably an expert in this, probably more than I am. When I think of delayed egress doors, it's literally, it looks like a fire, like an emergency exit in Walmart or something like that. It has a big metal bar on it. It has red wording on it and stuff like that. And it looks like a fire door to get out. And when you push the bar and it sounds an alarm and it doesn't open, the lock doesn't release for like 30 seconds. Could be 15 seconds, things like that. And you could probably create the time, but it's a big door, metal door with a bar on it. And that's what it looks like. What your guys are used to seeing probably at a big department store, to go out a door that you're not supposed to go out.
Okay. I just want to make sure we're not assuming that everybody knows exactly what that means and what that is. Brandon, anything to add as far as what
He's exactly right. We have 2 exit doors to each, dormitory area, and one has the delayed egress and one does not.
So, okay, that's super helpful. The only note I saw on this was Ashley was like, is 30 seconds too short? And so I want to let's yeah, the answer
Yes.
is yes.
That should be
So I
about
think,
a minute, I think, to be honest with you.
well, I was gonna say, I think for the purposes of this conversation, I'm gonna back us out of the weeds on that a little bit and just say, is everybody interested and good with this idea of this? Obviously maybe research around best practice is needed as far as what's too short, what's too long, what's safe, what's unsafe. But the concept of this delayed lock egress door, uh, is that something that it seems like everybody is good with? Is there anybody that has major concerns? Go ahead, Jenna.
I just want to ask a quick question. If we went longer, are those doors, can they be automatically released if there's a fire?
So that's what I was saying about, I think that it's just gonna, I think for the purposes of this conversation, let's assume that
goes off.
The fire code would be followed. Let's assume that whatever has to happen will happen. But as far as the idea of the safety of the child and preventing running, that we are in favor of this as a prevention method. Is that okay? Cool. But yes, absolutely on that. I don't want to be like, well, too bad. We want to keep them safe. You're like, but there's a fire. There's literally a fire. So yeah, that's definitely something. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
I'll just throw my view probably changes a little bit going from like a regular foster home to a residential setting.
Yes.
Just throwing that out.
Yes, and I think we'll come back to that as far as when we spell this out a little bit. I'm talking residential facilities right now, and then we can differentiate as needed as far as tools available to foster homes. I didn't see, and maybe I missed it again. I was just kind of hopping between everybody's so I'm gonna say I didn't see any opposition on the delayed egress door. And again, we don't have to have 100%, but it seems like we do so far. Is there any other mechanism as far as building security goes that I missed that people are referencing? Again, we're not to perimeter yet, so we're not talking that piece. I think that seemed to be the one big thing that everybody was like, seems like the only, again, to the spirit of not invasive, helping curb. But Brandon, is there anything else that you all do?
Cameras. We have outdoor cameras.
Cameras.
Yeah. Didn't think of that. That's a good one.
Now so again, if we're just sticking to building for now, we could bring that back to perimeter too. What does that look like on the building side? Just on each door or on each exit door kind of thing?
We have it on the roof for the external, and so they can see a visual area.
Okay. So not internal. What about internal?
Oh, we have internal cameras too.
Okay.
And
I'm gonna for building, I'm gonna put the visual one for perimeter because it looks like it's like scanning.
The only two places we don't have cameras are obviously bathrooms and bedrooms.
Okay, so no bad. And that's not, so I just want to make sure I'm understanding. Cameras are not a current requirement. They are available, but as far as like, but you all do that, but that's not necessarily in every facility.
Correct.
Okay. All right. No bathrooms and bedrooms otherwise. All right. Are y'all good with that? Any concerns around the camera piece? Again, we're not getting stuck on funding or anything there. We're just talking, we're waving our magic wand, y'all. Okay.
Brandon, can you chase kids for any distance at all? I don't know your facility. Unfortunately, I've never been down there.
Yeah, so we do until we deem it is too much of a risk. I mean, we got a lot of territory that is dangerous, but oftentimes that's when we will intervene if kids are there. Like I said, I mean, I've been pretty upfront. Like, we're going to protect kids, so we do our best to prevent everybody in those situations. But it gets real gray what you're allowed to do and what is considered unsafe and not unsafe. And oftentimes discussions with licensing around, this is, we have difference of opinions on what is unsafe for staff and kids and not outside the community. So it can get difficult. The other thing is, we have, communities and people's, private property that do not want us on there, so we can't proceed and pursue if kids go there. So,
and when you confront most kids, do most go back, or is there a high percentage that just say, the heck with you, I'm going to continue to go?
Yeah, so we have, and I was just about to respond to Stephanie in the chat, so we have minimized, as far as like what I would call the general, runaway, behavior across our facility. Typically, our runaway behavior is one or two individualized kids that are at a real high risk, that are, just struggling, trauma and treatment. And I think for the most part, you'll probably, uh, unless the facility's, going through some struggles, you'll see that as the common denominator, is that the kids that we're talking about, at least at our level of care, that are running like that, are the most extreme and high risk kids that we have. And so that's where, it's not the typical kid pop that's working the treatment program and those things. It's kids that are really struggling this is happening with. And now, that being said, we're more successful not going hands-on things more times than not. But as we know, that it's the one time that is always the worst time, the worst situation, the most dangerous situation. And I think that's what you're trying to prevent in these at-risk behaviors, because the one time they jump in front of a car, or the one time they try to jump in a canyon, or they try to jump into an adult's car that they shouldn't be doing. Those situations do occur with these kids. They're not in their right thoughts or emotions out there, and it is can be very dangerous for them. So.
I don't want to cut anybody off. We got this other group knocking on our door trying to get back in the room. So I'm going to move us on if you're okay with that. But we can keep chatting. Thanks, Kevin, for that question, and Brandon for jumping in too. I think I'm good on building though. So I'm going to go perimeter and community. Perimeter, I didn't see anybody against fencing. I saw everybody saying, can we please explore this? If it's a resource issue, can we create a couple of facilities that have higher fencing, and we just know that we're routing kids there that are, having higher run risk, etc. Jenna, to your point about the land piece, is there a facility maybe that, so on the perimeter piece, the way I read it is no one said they're anti-fencing. Everyone just knows that with all the challenges that were just presented, that is this possible? So my suggestion is, let's not hash out too much here, and let's put that as a strong interest of this group, with an acknowledgement that there's a lot of potential barriers there. And so we can maybe put Brian on that from a research perspective side to just get real. But if there is an opportunity for a recommendation that feels realistic, we could coalesce around that. Does that sound good to everyone? Or does anybody have any major concerns with that approach?
Can I just add, if we have a magic wand, could we explore like lasers being out in the perimeter? And so potentially you wouldn't have to have a field. And so if they cross I think, unfortunately, with my dog and their shock collar, not shocking children, but if they break the barrier, it sends the alarm to the staff that they're broaching the edge or something like that.
Right. Yeah. So an exploration of like what technology might be available to like further alert staff, other than just like, did you happen to look at the camera and notice they were running? So yeah. Okay. Love that. Everybody okay? Everybody comfortable? Stephanie, you want to jump in on there?
Yeah, I wanted to resurrect an idea that Elizabeth had mentioned some time back, and that was
resurrect.
Resurrect. I didn't want us to lose track of it, but she did talk about the possibility of using ankle monitoring depending on the youth, their history, their risk factors, right? And I talked to Brian about this pretty extensively, and he could not find a jurisdiction necessarily that did this, but also that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I think this goes to this use of technology, which I really appreciated Brandon's work in this area. I think there's ways to continue to explore the use of technology and perhaps ankle monitoring. Again, I don't want to stigmatize kids, but the truth is there are certain kids that are going to be higher risk than others. I mean, that's just the point. So I don't want to lose sight of that idea.
Yeah, I appreciate you naming that. I did see that in yours, and as I was going through these, so I'm kind of pulling out this idea of tech because I think, yeah, there might be some things that we don't even know exist. Like I'm like, oh, there's lasers. Like that's not literally not just in movies. Like, okay, cool. Is anybody, I don't want to send us off on too long of a trail, but is anybody, I'm just gonna throw out the ankle monitor piece. Again, it would require a thorough assessment of where kids at, right? A trauma-informed staff to understand that that is what's actually needed for that particular kid versus like, you've run before, here's an ankle monitor. So all of that, knowing that's a thing, is anybody like completely opposed to that as an idea of an option for facilities? Just curious. And let's just spend like 2 minutes on this. Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm certainly for it as an idea. It's cheap. I was in a situation where a couple of facilities used that were private facilities. The problem is ankle monitors can always easily be cut off. And that's what I experienced on a direct basis. You know, my son cut off 3 ankle monitors.
Yeah. Let me just say this though. Again, if we're looking to prevent, right, it's not perfect. So I love that you're acknowledging the tension there, but I also want to name that doesn't mean that we've waved a magic wand and no kids ever run. It's that we've done something to help, you know, deter that. So
Trace,
yeah.
Can I just add, like, I think, you know, ankle monitors can help. Like I said, I believe in, you know, trying as many things as possible to stop this, you know, behavior. But I do think unless there's a system to back up and give meat or teeth to, you know, what happens, you know, around the the violation of the ankle monitoring, I think that becomes, you know, I guess an empty deterrence if there isn't something there. You know, where I've seen it work, you know, I'm originally from Pennsylvania and I started my career there, you know, when they would be connected to, you know, like probation or things of that nature, it does work because it's a monitoring system. But if there's nothing behind it, I think kids, you know, that want to run will still run and, you know, cut the ankle monitor off around this.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm hearing from, and Ashley, I kind of figure that's why I was just throwing it out there. I think it's certainly, again, maybe we can loop this into this broader technology piece to really explore and come back with you all. So I'm going to move us on because we're at time, but and the last thing is on the community side. So there were quite a few of you that I can't remember whose original this idea, maybe Jenna, around this idea of like, what does community care look like when you are around a facility and you're around these kids? So, you know, what sort of safety things could be required. So starting with something as simple as a crosswalk. I mean, it's like look at the safety mechanisms every school has, right? I remember like fighting for a crosswalk because I worked at a school and our kids literally couldn't get to their cars. The parents were crossing a major road. And so like are those requirements that we currently have? It sounds like no. So I think I can flesh out the ideas that you all kind of shared as far as what community care would look like as a package, and then we can kind of respond to that. But I think we have enough. I'm assuming nobody here would be concerned about implementing some sort of policy recommendation around every facility that has a child in it that, you know, is a potential run or run risk, et cetera, needs to have, you know, these 4 safety elements in place as something that, you know, would keep community and kids safer, ideally. Anything to add there? I'm seeing head nods. So I think, again, I think there were like 4 of you that named that explicitly. So we good? Okay. I think we got somewhere. I think we got somewhere good. Now my last question is, who's going to be my volunteer to help work with me and Brian to bring this back to the group, the next meeting, and share out kind of where we got. And I will volunteer you. Jenna came off mute. Jenna, are you up for it? You had so many great ideas. Cool. Yep. That'd be awesome. You shared a lot of great ideas, so I think that makes total sense. Stephanie, were you gonna say anything before I admit everybody else? Okay, cool. All right, y'all. Well, I really appreciate this. This felt super tangible and felt like we got somewhere, and excited to share this back with the group, and certainly welcome your feedback. If you feel like we're missing something that's really important to you, or spoke over something that you were trying to say. So thanks for helping me condense the time, but I'm going to welcome back the full group, and we'll close out today's meeting. All right, welcome back, everybody. We had a couple things we had to get through on our group, so I apologize that you were sitting in the waiting room for a minute, but we had to wrap things up. Doris, how did
we tried to manage our time as appropriate for the agenda?
Called out. Well, I'd be curious, maybe just for the sake of time, yeah, touche, really. For the sake of time, Doris, why don't you just do a quick rundown of kind of where your conversation went, and I can do the same. And then if you were a member of the public, which I don't think I see, but if you're a member of the public that has public comment and you would like to make public comment, please let me know in the chat right now, and we'll make sure to reserve time. If you have somebody you feel can just jump in for you, Doris, but somebody share from your group how things went, and obviously we're going to come back and spend more time with it in the next meeting.
Yep. So I will do the report out for our group, since we didn't get any volunteers. We almost didn't get any volunteers to work with Brian. But with that, so we the group seemed to be consistent in wanting to have the sort of some characteristic driven levels of distinction for the youth. So we came up with kind of this high, moderate, low framework, which is what Beth's team uses in the Denver area. So an opportunity to leverage a framework that already exists. We talked about some of the characteristics that would be included in that: higher risk kids who have a history of suicide, kids who are at a greater risk for sexual exploitation or trafficking, and kids who have any kind of medical conditions that suggest that they would need to be found quickly. And then on the excuse me. And then on the response piece, we talked a lot about the immediate response. We didn't get as deep in looking at the levels that might be below immediate response. But we did also talk about some kind of a standardized tool that would be used to assess for risk and also the immediacy of the response. And we named in our notes a couple of existing tools that could be revisited, and then also named Tennessee as a potential state to look at, given their response and tool, but some concerns about aspects of their tool that I think this committee would need to work out. Team, anything I missed?
All right, way to go. Well, I'll give it a go for our group then too, unless anybody is champing at the bit. Somebody told me it was champing, not chomping. Did I say it right? Champing at the bit?
I think it's chomping.
It's chomping at the bit.
Because the horse is chomping on the bit with his teeth.
I don't know. Somebody told me champ. All right. Well, I'll report back at the next.
Yeah, get to the bottom of that.
Wrong, Tracy. That person was wrong.
That person was wrong. Stephanie, what were you gonna say?
I just love how Becky made that so visual for me. I will never forget it now. It's like, of course it makes sense when she illustrates it like that. Thank you.
I am happy to help, Stephanie.
Did you grow up with horses? Do you know this?
Yeah, I do know this.
See? Oh, what a great
Did you see what Brian just sent?
No.
It is champing.
It's champing?
I grew up on a farm. I've never heard that.
Me either.
Somebody, all right, we'll come back to this. Brian, if you could release a memo to the group.
It is
great. Okay, all right. Sorry to take us off on that one. Okay, so on the prevention side, we were talking all things hardware. We kind of I think we got some good places. So the way that we organized it, Jenna helped me on this one, which is thinking about it at the room level, like youth room level, and we're talking residential facilities, youth room level, the building level, the perimeter level, and the community level. So where are there opportunities at each of those levels for any sort of hardware that might, again, work in prevention for youth who run? So at the room level, we just talked around, there's Mission Impossible lasers on the market, which we didn't know, and they're affordable. And so Brandon talked about that. At the building level, we talked about the delayed doors, the cameras, and not obviously no bathrooms, no bedrooms. So how do we honor folks' privacy while also keeping them safe? At the perimeter level, looking at exploration of perimeter fencing, there's obviously a lot of challenges. Dennis named one of those pieces. So really the group is just interested in making crystal clear what the opportunities might be there, because they feel like that is something that would benefit facilities and also communities and kids' safety. There was also a piece around, I know Elizabeth, you had mentioned, and it was resurfaced in our group around this idea of something as tangible as ankle monitoring. And obviously there are some unique challenges and concerns there, but what we then kind of zoomed out to was this idea of exploring tech more broadly. What is available around safety? What feels like it's a trauma-informed response? How could we kind of roll all that up into one thing? So really just an idea of how can we further explore the technology that is, again, we didn't know there were lasers. So clearly we don't know what's all out there. So wanted to explore there. And then the community piece was really clear too. Can we make recommendations around standard I use the example of I worked at a school and every school has a crosswalk. And if you don't, you're going to talk to your city council member, because that is a requirement to get your kids to and fro safely. So are there requirements for facilities as well, as far as community safety goes, but also kids safety into the community? So what does that look like? And might we make some solid recommendations around those pieces? Anything I'm missing from my group? That was the gist and how we worked down it. Obviously, you'll hear more details and the next meeting. And we did get a volunteer. Jenna was our volunteer. Very, very excited volunteer. So Doris, I was sorry to hear that.
We did get a volunteer. It
okay.
just took a little bit longer in the uncomfortable silence.
Got it.
To get someone to raise their hand.
Got it. All right, y'all. Well, thank you. I think it was sounds like a really great meeting across both groups today. I do not see any requests for public comment, so I think we're gonna wrap a little early today. But yeah, appreciate each of you. David reminded me that it is Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day. Love to each of you.
That's why I'm wearing the pink.
That's why you're wearing the pink. Yeah, I left mine upstairs. I'll have to go put that on after this meeting. Stephanie, we'll hand it to you for just a quick little gratitude closure, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, just again, really strong work, everybody. Thank you for thinking out of the box. I'm super excited by these ideas that I heard generated, and we will be taking them, and Brian will especially be taking them, and trying to start working through some preliminary recommendation language with the help of your designated member. So we're moving, and that's always good. So thank you for being here.
Perfect. Thanks, y'all. Have a great day. Take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye.